So, hello to all of our, well, so you're mine and Tracy's favorite students, right? Because you're here. I know this is the last week of class, so this is not an easy time for everyone to be here, but this is a good opportunity for you. So we have Dr. Sarah Olmsted from USAID and the Millennium Challenge Corporation.
Not USAID, but...
Oh, okay, sorry. I always get the... Yes. So I won't give you the full biography of her because it is about as confusing as mine is in terms of where she's been and what she's done. For your purposes, it's interesting to know she originally studied physics as an undergraduate and then moved away from that and then did a PhD looking at conflict issues in Uzbekistan at the RAND Corporation. They have a separate graduate school there called PARTY. She's been, well, how long have you actually been in Kosovo?
I've been resident for just over a year, and I've been working on Kosovo since 2016.
Okay, that's what I didn't understand. So she's also worked in Namibia, in Georgia, in the Philippines, probably some other places that I'm forgetting, but she's an expert in terms of how to use different methodologies in studying problems such as energy. And I think what she'll be able to do here today is help fill in the gaps, stuff that I didn't teach you yet or that Tracy didn't teach you yet, or at least give you some new ideas on how to look at things, not just in terms of problem solving, but also, as I understand, the role of women in energy, which is something dearly lacking in this country. So, thank you, Dr. Olmsted. And
Thank you. I'm going to try to make this interactive, so if you have any questions or comments, please speak up, and I'm also going to be asking you a lot of questions, because frankly, I just put this together last night, and I don't know if I have a whole hour worth of stuff to say at you, so it will be a conversation. So just first, 2 words about Millennium Challenge Corporation. This is not like an official presentation by Millennium Challenge Corporation, but just to know that we're a small U.S. government agency that does economic development around the world in relatively well-governed countries. And by relatively well-governed, I mean better than your peers. So we give every country, lower income and lower middle income country, a scorecard, and anyone who does better than the median is possible to be selected by our board for a program. So Kosovo, we have a program that's focused on energy efficiency and kind of like demand side management of energy, as well as transparent and accountable governance that really focuses on opening up data and getting people to use data. And so this presentation, I actually I don't know too much about everything that you're learning in your class, but I thought that this is something that brings our 2 programs together and kind of combines them. So first, I'm a data person, all those years of physics, and then I was an economist at MCC for many years. So I like numbers and I like charts. So I'm going to present some things that I'm sure you already know. So you hear a lot of complaints in Kosovo that electricity is expensive. But actually electricity prices aren't that high. I don't know if you can see Kosovo here, and the red line is Kosovo. So there are a lot of countries that have significantly more expensive electricity than Kosovo does. And just the green is taxes, and the purple is basic prices. So you see also, it's not overly taxed. Like, Macedonia, half of the price is tax, or in Germany as well, half the price is tax. So it's not that bad of a situation in terms of just the price of Kosovo, of electricity. It's about on trend. You're about on trend. So here's all of the countries in terms of electricity costs, GDP per capita. You're right in the middle of the bunch. And here's Kosovo again with some comparators. Where's Kosovo? There's Kosovo. All right, so you're right in the middle of the pack. Also from businesses, if you talk to any businesses, they say, oh, electricity, it's so expensive. You know, you need to lower the price of electricity. Well, again, Kosovo is way down here. It's not that expensive. You're on par with France, Bulgaria, not anywhere close to some more industrialized countries up here. Serbia's much cheaper, but that's also for not good financial reasons or fiscal reasons. And in addition to just the price, a lot of businesses complain about connection costs, and that is, Kosovo does seem to be more expensive in terms of connection costs, just getting connected to the electricity system in the first place. As well, and I don't think I included those statistics, you have a lot of outages. At least the data that is lagged suggests there's a lot of outages on electricity, and so this is a cost for businesses because they have to buy generators, they have to do stuff to safeguard their production or their goods that might require electricity to be existent. If you have a lot of call centers and a lot of kind of nearshoring of IT services, and those are all very energy intensive industries that are very, very reliant on not only the price of electricity, but the security and stability of the electricity. What Kosovo is high on is energy consumption. So you see, you're really at the top of in terms of your GDP per capita in energy use. You're using a lot of energy per capita compared to all your comparators. And it's hard to see, but there's a bunch of orange here, and those are your immediate neighbors. Here's as well the time flow. So Kosovo is green here, and you see your neighbors. This is the change in electrical power consumed. So everyone's going up. That makes sense. Countries are growing, becoming more developed. There's more business growth, so you should be consuming more. From 2000. Also, probably post-war, there's a lot of reconstruction going on that creates more use. So, what's with the complaints about the electricity prices then, or the electricity costs? It's not the price, but people are using a lot of electricity. According to various studies, including one that I'm sure you are all familiar with from AUK. It's quite old now, I think 2013 maybe. Households spend a lot of their money on electricity. A third of surveyed homes are spending 10 to 20% of family income on electricity bill. And another almost third is spending it 20 to 30% of their bill. And in winter, costs can be extremely high, especially when compared to the average salary or the average income, which is very low. So it's clearly not an issue of the price, because you can't get much lower. You're already really close to the bottom of the list. So the issue is how much people are spending. And this is just a comparison. So you saw those numbers, 10 to 20%, 20 to 30%. Czech Republic is up here at about 9%. But a lot of countries, UK is here at 2 to 4%. A lot of EU countries are much lower, and I think in the States you are considered energy poor if you spend more than 10% of your income on energy. Now, this is partly because people probably have a higher income, and so electricity costs might not be that different, or energy costs might not be that different, but if you have a higher income, it's a lower percentage of your energy, of your income. But, so you hear a lot of complaints, but what is the problem exactly? What are people doing about their energy use? So you see a lot of houses like this that are lived in. Some are unfinished. Some might be finished but are dilapidated. They have old windows. Maybe there's new windows and there's big holes around the windows where they haven't filled in. Maybe there's just some spray foam insulation or something. So why do people leave their houses in this state? Okay. They don't have money. So capital investment, it costs money to finish their house. Okay. Why else? Any ideas? So like, I don't know, there's a dish on top of this one. They're paying someone for cable, right?
Sometimes they don't know the importance of insulation.
Okay, they don't know the importance. They don't know that it's an option maybe. They don't know what they can do.
They would rather buy a very expensive flat screen rather than insulate.
Yeah, exactly. Or, you know, maybe you'll see like a BMW parked in front of these houses, right?
Or they will marry their sons.
Any other thoughts? Okay. So it's not easy to do the math. It's not easy to figure out like that this is something I should care about. Maybe there's a lack of comparison. You don't know what is the alternative. What are the other options? You don't know how much you're losing. You just get a bill, you get your energy bill, you know it's expensive, and it's crappy, and you don't like it, but you don't know that there's another alternative. You don't know what your neighbors are paying. You don't know what you could be paying if you did X, Y, and Z. You just get the bill, and you don't think, oh, gee, look, I used less last month. I wonder why that is. What did we do differently? Or I'm using less this month than last month. I wonder what happened other than maybe the temperature changed. Maybe people aren't thinking about how they use energy. I know I go around the house turning the lights off after my husband. I come home in the evening and like every light in the house is on, the TV is on. There are like 3 computers out, open, on. I don't know why. Different people have different, processes about these things. So like people aren't thinking about how they're using energy. Having a light bulb on doesn't mean anything to me in terms of money, in terms of bills. Maybe lack of options and benefits. So like what is insulation? Why should I have it? What can it do for me? Don't know. Maybe someone does know and they can't make a decision. So I know our neighbors spent some money to put solar panels on their roof or change their windows, but I don't have the decision-making power in my family, so I can't convince, whoever does have it to make some changes. And maybe some unobserved incentives. Your tax bill, in some cases, you don't get taxed until your house is finished. So if it's always in a state of construction, you get a pass until you finalize that, and then you start having to pay. So there could be some tax issues or some regulation issues. You're worried that you'll have to get it inspected if you get it formalized and if you get it finished, and it's not going to meet inspection, or you're going to have to pay something for it to be inspected, or you're going to have to pay a bribe or whatever. There could be all sorts of informal norms as well. So these are all some things that make it really difficult for households to do cost-benefit analysis and make decisions that, I'm going to finish these houses, I'm going to fix the holes, I'm going to put some insulation in the roof, which, I don't know, this doesn't look like it has any. And those are going to have an impact in my daily life because I'm going to spend less money. I have a 110-ish year old house in DC. It's about 140 square meters. When I moved in, they showed me everything, all the places where the air was leaking, where hot air was leaking and where cold air was getting in the winter. I didn't do anything because it was like, then I have to figure out, who to go to get this fixed. I have to pay them money. I have to worry if they're ripping me off or not. All sorts of things. So there's lots of reasons why people don't invest in their homes. But something like 70+% of the energy use in Kosovo is by households, not by industry, by households. And so it's a lot of things like this that creates this issue. And sometimes, as you said, it's a lack of cash or borrowing power. People don't save for these kinds of investments. They're not fun. I just replaced my windows. It cost a ton of money. Am I excited that the windows look exactly the same, but now I'm just like losing less energy? No, that's a really boring investment. But it'll save me money in a long time. So one of the things that has helped people take a little more ownership over some of these issues and give them more decision-making power is labeling. So what kinds of things might you want to see on a label to help you make decisions about what to buy? Like, what would you see on a label? What would you want to see? If you're trying to decide, like I'm buying a refrigerator, and I don't want to have to spend a ton of money. Maybe I care a little bit about energy efficiency, so I'm like looking at that.
It's energy use.
Okay, energy use. And how would you want to see that quantified?
Like in watts or something?
Okay, so like you could say, what are the kilowatt hours that this uses in a day, in a year, in a month? Does that mean something for everyone?
No.
Yeah. So like if I told you this uses 630 megawatts per year, or kilowatt hours per year, like what would you do with that? How could you think of like what that scale is?
I don't think the average person is informed enough to know what that means.
Yeah. So that could, but you can know that 630 kilowatt hours per year is more than 550 kilowatt hours per year, so maybe it helps you compare. All right, what else? I don't want to give you guys all the answers. What's an easier way to get people to understand the energy usage? Like that people do understand, anyone could understand. Yeah. You already said this one. Exactly. So you can say on average, right? Because everyone's bill might be different depending on where they live, but you can say on average this is going to cost you $30 a year or $100 over its entire lifetime of use or something like that. Where this was really useful was incandescent bulbs versus LED bulbs. Incandescent bulbs use so much energy and have such a shorter lifespan. If you compare the dollar value of running that for a month or a year compared to a LED bulb or a CFL, you can compare, okay, maybe it costs $5 for the LED bulb, but it's only going to cost me $5 over the next 5 years. Or I can have a $1 incandescent bulb that costs me $25. So then, even if you don't have the money is tight, but you can think, okay, but I spend $5 now, and I'm going to save $20 over the next year, right? Okay, so some other things. maybe energy usage. Maybe you want to just make it easy for people to say, this is an A product, this is a D product, you know, like just give them levels. Maybe you want a product lifetime. Like, okay, CFL is going to last you 7 months of continuous use. LED is going to last you 5 years of continuous use. That has an impact on your decision to buy that. So here are some examples of energy labeling from EU, South Africa, and the US. And you can see they've each decided to go with different elements. So EU just went with a grade and a kilowatt per year. Plus, these are all for refrigerators, I believe. Or this one's, for refrigerator as well. So this one says 155 liters. I can't picture what 155 liters of milk looks like. I can barely picture what 1 liter of milk looks like, but I definitely can't picture so I'm not sure that's that useful. But sound level could be useful if you're deciding on an appliance you're going to be sitting next to it all the time. South Africa also went with sound level. They also went with volumes. And energy consumption per year, and a letter value. They also usually have a estimated lifetime. US, money is king, so we put the dollar value right in front, and then down below the kilowatt hours per year. And then there's a bunch of details also in the fine print of how the volume. I know even less what a cubic foot looks like than a liter. I can picture. I don't know why we still use imperial measurements, but. And you can see the range of products. So like this is 67, and they say, well, the more efficient ones will get you down to 57. The less efficient ones will get you up to 74. So you can also see like, okay, should I spend like a whole year looking for one that's only going to cost me $30 a year? No, because it really doesn't exist. It's not on this scale. So these are things that help you like in day-to-day, just looking for how you make decisions. Well, what about at a grander scale? So data helps you make decisions, but how do you look at, so one is purchasing goods. That's easy, there are labels. What about like your daily usage and your daily habits? A lot of utilities are starting to compare people against other people, helping you compare, see where you come out. This is you compared to your neighbors, and you're doing worse. You lose 14% more energy on heating than your neighbors. What are you doing? Why are you doing that? I keep my house at 19 degrees, 18, maybe 18 degrees sometimes. I think that's like crazy talk for Kosovo, but so I'm like down here maybe. But then they give you an example of what you can do. Okay, like even if you just put it from 30 down to 29, or I don't know what you guys are keeping your houses at, but at the office they keep it at 30 for some crazy reason. Even if you just break it down 1 degree, it's going to help you out, and you're going to look better compared to your neighbors. Here's another one. Okay, now you can see what the good guys are doing. So this is like the lower end, that scale from the energy guide. You see, okay, well, the really efficient neighbors are down here, and then this is like the average. So this gives you a target. Okay, how much more could I come down, logically? And then it also gives you smiley faces. Everyone wants smiley faces. I want more smiley faces. I don't know what, they should have 1 down here. You get no smiley faces if you're more than average. And then they also give you a little tidbit of information. A 100-watt bulb burning for 10 hours uses 1 kilowatt of hour. That's incandescent. So there's different levels of detail that utilities are going into now to help people understand their bills, help people understand what can they do to lower their bills. And it seems weird for a utility whose job is to make money from you, the customer, to want you to be able to lower your bills. But, there's limited electricity out there. There's limited electricity in Kosovo. Anything that's being used by households, any heat that's getting used and then going out the uninsulated roof or the poorly installed windows, that's energy that can't be used by industry or that can't be used by the private sector or the public sector, schools and hospitals, to be used productively. That's just lost money, it's lost heat, lost energy on over. Then there's just comparing yourself to yourself. So I get something like this on all of my energy bills in the States. It says, how did you do last year this month? And it tells you other useful things like what was the average temperature every month. So you can see, well, I used a lot. Well, maybe this is a DC, say. It was really hot this July, so I had the air conditioning on all the time. Whereas last year it was much more temperate. So this is clearly not a hot weather place. Or maybe, this could be also the average use in the city or whatever. So these are all things, devices that utilities are using now to help people understand and control their own energy usage. I don't know if this is legible. Can you guys read any of this? This is basically describing some initiative of a utility as well that, you opt in, it gives you different strategies to lowering your energy use, and you can opt in, and you can win points when you say, oh, I just turned off, the lights behind me, or I just, lowered the temperature, or lowered the temperature in the winter by a degree or whatever, and you can get points, and you can use them to vote on things like community investments, or my utility at home you can sign up for something like this, and they'll actually give you $5 off your bill if you allow them to control your heat during peak hours. So there's all sorts of things that are giving people the opportunity to have greater control and spend less money. Do you guys know this word, agency?
I heard of it, but not really, I don't really know the meaning.
Okay. So agency is when you are able to be the agent in what you want to do. So you are able to affect change. You are able to make a decision that has some impact. So a lot of things that we face here in the development community in general is people coming to us telling us we don't have agency. Maybe they say electricity prices are too high, someone needs to make that come down. Or I worked many years in Georgia, and in Georgia we had an education program. And this one head of a school was always coming to us and saying, I produce 50 welders every year, and none of them can get jobs. Why don't you make people hire the welders? And we say to him, why are you still producing welders if none of them can get jobs? So that's also on the students, picking welding, but you can't help. Someone told them to pick welding, so that's part of the. So what do you get when people feel like they don't have any power to change things? You get this bill from the utility, you can't do anything about it because someone else, ERO, sets the tariffs. You have this house that uses the energy it does, you don't know any different. It takes away the agency, and all that you can do is complain. So these tools are trying to give people back the agency, saying, actually, you have a lot of control over this. You have a lot of control over exactly how much energy you use, and it's all based on decisions. And there are reasons for some of the decisions, like we didn't put insulation on the house because it was too expensive, we didn't have the money. Without any other information, you can just stop right there. But if you know what? if you save up, it's only $1,000 to insulate this house. Sounds like a lot of money, but you'll save $50 a month from here on out. Then you can calculate some rate of return and decide, okay, how do we make that investment? Is this something that we should prioritize or not? What do women have to do with this? Why did I have women in the title? I should have asked that before I put up this slide. Like, okay, you can all read it, but what do you think? In your families, what role do women play in the household, in household decision-making, in terms of like money management, buying of stuff? A lot of mothers control the purse strings. They're the ones who are going to the grocery store. They're the ones who are going out and buying maybe energy-efficient products. They're the ones at home turning the lights on after you leave all of your all of your rooms, all of the lights on in your rooms. In the US, I don't know the statistics here, but women are responsible to buying 80% of household goods. So they're the ones looking at those labels and making a decision like, okay, can we spend €5 here for this light bulb instead of the €1 one? And they make that trade-off. There's a lot of evidence that women and men use money differently. And that's, I don't know, may or may not be a surprise. So women are more likely to invest in their families in a permanent way, either health, education, getting people more food, and they're equitable in the distribution. So if you give money or food vouchers to men, actually, that food does not get equally distributed among the family. And then women are also more likely to spend on durable goods like washing machines, refrigerators, things that lower the overall level of work required in the house. So a lot of evidence is that women think about the long term more than men. And long-term benefits that will pay off in the end, but may be more expensive up front. So, if we scale up from household decisions to like the country as a whole, every country as a whole, not just Kosovo, you can imagine that empowering women as decision makers can have some long-term benefit here, right? They have a different approach to risk, so maybe they take smaller risks and have smaller rewards, but more guaranteed rewards. And they may, because they focus on the long term and may focus less on ribbon cutting. So, for instance, I was working in Liberia, and they really wanted, they were trying to convince me, I was the economist, and the economist's job is to say, is doing this investment better than dumping money out of a helicopter? That's MCC's line for, do we make this investment or not? And the Liberians came to me and said, we want to pave this road up in the north. There's all sorts of great stuff up in the north. There's lots of people who live up there, and there could be tourism. I don't know who's going to North Liberia for tourism. All the animals are dead from the war, so there's not a lot to see. But they were very adamant that this was a great investment. So I did the number crunching, I did the analysis. There were like 3 trucks per year that used this road, and then a lot of motorcycles. And I came back and said, it just doesn't make sense to pave this road. No one is going here. There's no traffic. No one is using this road. And economists don't believe in, if you build it, they will come. They want to see, no, people are struggling with this now. There's a lot of demand for this, and people are really stymied by this. So I said, it doesn't make sense to pave this road. What does make sense is to have a really good, well-maintained gravel road. And they said, yeah, that obviously makes more sense. but no one wants to cut a ribbon in front of a gravel road. Like, that's not what politicians want to stand in front of, saying, look at what we did, guys. This is such a great dirt road. It's well maintained all year round, despite the rainy season. I should have put up a picture of Liberia roads in the rainy season. Honestly, you would be proud to cut a ribbon in front of that. But just Google that if you ever want to look at how good your roads have it here. So like, people have a really hard time making this decision. But women and men have different points of view. And women have different points of view. But if a whole portion of that point of view is missing from the decision making, you maybe never get this other perspective. And you never hear this other perspective. Whatever ends up being decided, they're going to pave that road for sure. Just MCC is not going to pay for it. And you're losing out on the impact of those decisions. And just coming back to kind of data and agency, the way women process that information about their family and what is a trade-off that's worth making is a lot different from the way men may see it. And so, I think just in sum, I think it's really critical that all of these decisions are made together, and that's why it's really important to empower women to be able to have part in these decisions and to be weighed, for their opinions to be weighed equally in these decisions. I mean, also there's a message to regulators here that a lot of who you're talking about, if you end up wanting demand management, so you want to lower usage of electricity, say, you need to target women as managers in the household. You need to find out what resonates with them. More women rate higher in terms of altruistic and pro-environment sentiments than men in studies. And so let's save the environment message may fall flat with a man who says, no, like my family first. But that may resonate with a woman even just with little things like shutting the lights off behind them. So I'll just stop there, and I'm happy to go back and talk about any of these things, but your questions or comments, you're welcome. Yeah.
So I noticed in one of your charts that Denmark, Norway, and Sweden had the lowest cost of electricity. Is that because that they made the transition into more renewable energy, or could it be other factors as well?
It could be other factors. So I mentioned, so these are industrial prices. So you guys in Kosovo, the industrial prices are higher than the household prices, in domestic prices. In some countries, they actually are trying to encourage private sector, so they may lower industrial prices compared to household prices. So sometimes this is industrial policy, trying to see like who do we want to, what kinds of advantages do we want to give people. So it could be that, could be some self-generation, probably not renewables, because honestly renewables are more expensive than traditional electricity. But I know a lot of those countries have geothermal, and geothermal's cheap once you've made the initial investment. So, but the initial investment's very high. Yeah, it's a good question. And but they're also very low here, Sweden and Finland. Oh, I didn't say that. But yeah. I mean, complaining can definitely change policies. Maybe not necessarily for the better, depending on what the complaints are, but yeah.
No, what I was saying is that I think, sorry if I misunderstood you,
Yeah.
but it really are the to save energy, because there are some kind of energy that you cannot just save.
Mhm.
And changing the number of taxes, changing that, let's say, the way the energy is produced would be more effective.
Hmm.
Let's say, let's shut down the lights. And on the other side, I strongly believe that everyone should be empowered in all the energy policies of the sector, but I also think that men should also get educated in energy policy.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Both share the house.
Yeah, yeah. And it depends, households vary a lot of who has the decision-making power. There are a lot of studies out there, and I can give you lots of references on these, looking at like houses where women actually aren't empowered, men only make the decision, and like what the outcomes are there. So obviously, education on that front is really critical. So it's like education of men or empowerment of women might get you some similar outcomes. But in terms of the way regulations are determining how you use electricity, I agree on some aspect of that, and I'll explain how I agree with that. But what were you thinking exactly in terms of, just in terms of the origin of the energy or amount used?
More on the origin of the
Okay.
energy and the way how it's,
Okay.
the way all the legislation actually
Yeah. So
defines how you
this is all kind of irrespective of where the energy comes from. This is just people are using per capita in Kosovo a lot more energy than your peers and than other countries. You're at the top of the curve. So people are overusing. They don't actually have to use as much as they're using. So presumably that's not all out of a desire to use more energy, because I have heard from many people that, in the winter, they can only afford to heat one room of their house, and they're still spending a lot of money, and they're still using a lot of energy. So like ideally, they would use less energy and maybe heat their, or use the same energy, but be able to heat their whole home. So this is really striking, because not only are you using more energy, there is evidence that you're not using as much energy as people want to be using. So one way that you convince people, but the main narrative that you hear out there is energy prices are too expensive. But you have, you saw the other charts, you have very low energy prices. So where's the disconnect? Actually, if you want to, policy-wise, if you want to encourage people to use less energy, you make the cost more expensive. And actually what you do is you bring back the block tariffs. That gets poor people get a cheaper price because they're going to use less electricity. They probably have fewer appliances. Maybe they have a less insulated home, but they probably use coal or wood anyway. Then that targets richer people who are using more energy. So block tariffs are, if you're using 200 megawatts or less, or kilowatt hours or less, you're going to be charged one price, and then for anything above that, the price goes up. This is really common all over the world to try to give pressure to use less electricity, especially in a place like this where demand exceeds supply. Here you see the opposite. People are always clamoring about the price, and so there's a lot of pressure to bring the price down. They just got rid of the block tariffs last year. Is that right? Last year? And actually, they have reports now that people are using a lot more electricity, and it's creating a bigger strain on the... And that's directly because they are not now seeing the price. So honestly, as long as the tariff is cost reflective, an economist would say that's good enough. But if you want to use the price as a signal to nudge people in a particular direction of energy efficiency, you would say, okay, if you use less electricity, we're going to charge you less. If you use more electricity, we're going to charge you more. Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. This is from... This is from World Bank statistics. I think it does not include, but I have to check on that. That's a good question. Yeah, but a lot of your neighbors have similar losses, so yeah, I don't know. That's an excellent question. Did you have a question over here? Okay. Yeah.
So how do economists deal with the cultural issues? Like it may be more rational to turn down the heat in the winter, but Albanian culture seems to be very much against that.
Yeah. Yeah, so we had a project in Mongolia it was subsidizing highly efficient cook stoves. So in the Ger districts, the yurts, the like round traditional felt Mongolian houses, where it's just one room and they have a little coal-fired stove that's in there. We had a project to help transition those to more efficient stoves. And with the idea, it was actually a pollution project, because most of the pollution there, as here, I think, is household burning of coal. And it's just not that efficient and very polluting. And I think there's a really nice National Geographic story that's either just been published or is about to be published on this topic. If you want to see some stark pictures, take a look at that. But our program logic with that was we're going to provide people these more efficient stoves, and they're going to use less coal, and pollution's going to go down. Well, we provided them the stoves, and then, time goes by, we look at the results. Actually, they use the same amount of coal. And it turned out they had been too cold. They wanted it warmer, but they were prohibited by the amount of money they could spend on coal to the amount of coal that they were using. So actually, we didn't have any impact on the use of coal. Now, it did end up producing less pollution because they were combusting better, the coal was combusting better in these stoves, but we had no impact on people's energy use. And I think the same could be here. You can do a lot to a house, and right now, I mean, growing up, my cousins lived out in the middle of nowhere. They weren't really connected to the grid. They had one wood-burning stove and one little gas space heater. And we would sleep upstairs in my cousin's room, and you'd wake up with a sheet of ice on you from where your breath fell on your, condensed onto your chest. And that's the way they live. So like in winter, we would kind of sleep in the living room. And that's how people are living here. And that's not ideal. People are using less energy, actually, than they might want to be. So how do you, combat that they're using less energy than they want to, but also how do you convince them that they should want less heat? Because honestly, I cannot be indoors in the winter here. I'm like down in my shorts and a tank top. It's so hot in some of the places I go. And I think that just takes a long time. It takes people realizing what, actually this isn't comfortable. It's not comfortable to be 80 degrees or 30 degrees in your house at all times of the year. And maybe that's something that can't change me. It's just cultural preference. But that's where this price incentive can be beneficial if that's, something that that the government or the electricity sector thinks is important. Sorry, I have no idea where we are on time. Okay. Did that answer your questions? Okay.
Well, I know a lot of students have classes to get to
Yeah.
5 minutes, but really want to thank you for coming.
Thanks.